Hi, everybody. Welcome to SneakCon 2020. Today, we're going to be talking about organizing your projects at scale using Snyk. My name is Shawn Miller. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Snyk. I'm also an enablement lead. It's my pleasure to introduce you to.
I'm Omri. I'm a customer success team manager for the EMEA and the APJ teams, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. Thank you, Shawn, for inviting me to join.
No problem. Thanks, Omri. So for today's presentation, we're going to be talking about three key areas. We're going to be talking about using teams and groups effectively. If you're not familiar with teams and groups, don't worry, we are going to be covering that in the next slide. We're also going to be talking about governance and notifications. Now, again, with this presentation, we want to emphasize every company is different. You have the small companies where you start with 3-4 developers as a startup. You've got other companies with potentially tens of thousands of developers. How do you organize information in Snyk to still be effective, meet your security and your reporting requirements? And so this is really where understanding teams and groups is very critical. Now, the other thing too is it also depends on which Snyk plan you're in. So the first topic that we'll talk about is about using teams and groups effectively. And so what is a team and a group? Well, the first thing is what we call a group. You can think of like an account. It's the top level of aggregation we use. And you'll see that in Snyk Pro or Enterprise plans. And the way you typically experience it as a customer is when you click the drop down at the top, you'll see on the left side here, there are two logos. In my environment, I have access to two key groups for Snyk, effectively our demonstration area and then our tech services team. In your own environment, typically, let's say, for example, a medium-sized customer with a few hundred developers, you might see a single logo there representing your entire company. And so that's what we call a group, that top level aggregation. Under that, and that's what you're going to see over here on the right-hand side, is what we call an organization. So an organization is where you put your, basically your projects in Snyk. So that's where you would onboard your projects from GitHub, from your CI/CD environments, from Kubernetes and so on and so on. And the idea there is that each group would have potentially one or many organizations under it. There's even a roll-up capability. So you'll notice that top item there called Goof Limited. That actually allows you to see the results across all your organizations. So teams and groups is effectively what we call our groups, which is the top level, and then the organizations below it. And that's available again to Snyk Pro and Enterprise customers. Now, when we talk about how customers typically organize that, standard customers will typically have a single organization. So your license is applied to, or your plan rather, is applied to a single organization that gives you access to reporting. Basically, all the developers, everybody has access to a single area that you would be uploading all of your scans or onboarding your different projects across the different organizations. And that would give you access to reporting for license and so on, and security, I should say. Now, once you get into the Pro and Enterprise plans, this allows you more ability to aggregate and apply more controls across that. And so in the second diagram you're seeing here, you'll see the top level group, and under that you might have one or many organizations. And Omri, in this example, maybe I'm talking about a few dozen or a few hundred developers, may have a few organizations. Could you give us some insights in terms of how you've seen people organize their own organizations? And also what you've seen maybe much larger companies who may potentially have many lines of business, potentially thousands of developers. How do they organize the information and still use Snyk effectively?
Absolutely. So this is a good point. First of all, as you mentioned, the top entity is is the group. That's what we call the account. Under it, we have the multiple organization. In most cases, we see that the way that you will organize your account will be that every organization will stand for another team. What it also allows you to do is that you can give access to the relevant people into the organization, and we have different level of user roles, but you can give access to the relevant people to see only their scan code, and give the other people and other stakeholders the access to the multiple organization and to the group level. Another kind of a way of organizing it is that we saw that some customer organize it based on products or different application. So then people will have this aggregate view that shows everything that's related to one product, and the different teams will will collaborate on this organization. And as you mentioned, in some cases we see that we have bigger and larger companies. And in the next slide we can emphasize and show how it works. So in this case, they can have multiple groups, and under every group they can manage this kind of concept, or having like an organization per team or organization per product in this company. So if it makes sense, this is the way for people to organize everything and make sure that the right people, can access the right like organization and see the relevant stuff for them.
And if you don't mind, Omri, to give a practical example of how this might be used, I always like to use media companies to help explain this, because if you think about the number of lines of business and just the sheer size of those businesses, might be a multimedia company where you have a division or even a series of companies dedicated to the music industry. Then you might have a series of companies that are dedicated to film and television, and then another one about gaming, and another one about print, and so on. And so each of those companies are potentially their own, let's call them domains, where they have their own security teams, their own development teams with their own reporting and compliance requirements. And so this model that Omri and I are showing here, you might actually have a group representing each one of those major companies or lines of businesses, and they can represent the data and organize their teams and reports around that and limit access. But here's the cool thing. I might be on the security team. I might be the CTO or the CISO or somebody on a global team. I can have access across all those different silos if I have the appropriate permissions. So again, going back to that whole theme around visibility. Omri, did you have anything else you wanted to add to this before we move on?
No, that's perfect.
Perfect. Thanks, Omri. So the second part of this discussion is really around governance. So the first part is all about how do you upload your scans and be able to access them. Well, how do you apply controls to that? And so the next topic is really around governance. And so, Omri, maybe can you walk us through how do people usually set up controls within Snyk? What are some of the common patterns you've seen?
Sure. So when we talk about governance, there are different aspects. The first aspect is that every organization, first of all, can you can have your own like reporting and make sure that you're focused on the stats and the performances related to a specific team or a specific product. The next level is the integration level. Every organization, based on the requirements and their policy, can set the integrations to block issues or to have different kind of like behavior based on what they're required to have, based on their PCI compliance or their GDPR compliance. The next level will be that we have the policies. We have license policy and security policy. This feature will allow you to set the severities and affect the behavior of Snyk as a tool in your SDLC. So in this case, it's also something that you can have a granular policy based on what is required from this product or from this team. I think that it's also something that's worth to mention, that every organization has its own service account that is granular and has the permission for the specific organization. And of course, we can also have in the group level, a service account that can access every organization and see every project. So having this different level and different level of governance will allow you to run based on based on your policy and based on your requirements.
And Omri, if you don't mind, just to give some context around what a service account is, there's a lot of different ways customers use Snyk. A lot of times you might want a token that's being used by your the CI/CD systems that is actually reporting the results back to Snyk. And so the idea is, do you want to limit that token to a specific area in terms of what it can upload? Other times customers have integrations where maybe they're pulling data for report. Do you want to limit that call to a specific organization, or do you want to have it accessed across the entire group? And so those service accounts that Omri is talking about is a key strategy when you're doing integrations to limit access and visibility for things like reporting and also integrations as well. And so the other thing I wanted to highlight just as well is that with these different policies that Omri is talking about, with Snyk standard, you get a single license policy. Security policies are something that we're rolling out, as well as some of the new project attribute tags capability. Those are all in beta right now, where we're going to even have more powerful filtering and capabilities around applying those policies, which again would be available for Snyk Pro and Enterprise customers. Now, the last thing that we wanted to talk about is notifications, because you start rolling out Snyk. You have hundreds or even thousands of projects that you are finding issues on, and it's really important to make sure that the alerts and things that are occurring are appropriate. Because the last thing you want to do is create a lot of noise where people start becoming apathetic to the results that are being found. And so when we talk about notifications, again, looking at the different plans and what each organization may have, if you're on a Snyk standard plan or even on the free plan, notifications are found under settings, and effectively you're setting it for all of the users. So effectively what you're doing there is you could set rules like, for example, do you want to send an alert on, say, only high severity issues, or are licenses something that you're concerned about because not everybody else is? Maybe you want to turn that off, or certain reporting capabilities. But the other thing that you should also be aware of is that with larger organizations, again, each organization might have their own criteria for alerting. And of course, because you do have separate organizations, you can set those rules per organization as well. And so how you do that is there's two types of alert or notification settings, sorry. You have the organizational level. Again, you're setting that broadly for everybody that is a member of that organization. But here's the thing, you also have personal notifications as well. And so when you go into your own profile, you'll notice that you can set notifications and opt out of alerts so that maybe there's some projects that you're no longer concerned about. And that helps, again, dial down the noise and help you focus on the areas that you care about. The third thing that's not pictured in this slide is there's also an API that allows you to programmatically set notification settings. And especially when you're a much larger organization, you can set certain criteria around that again helps you be very effective. Now, the fourth type of notification, which I know is a passion project or topic for Omri, is really around Slack. And really, Omri, can you maybe give some background in terms of what you've seen customers use Slack for and how they found some really great wins with that?
Sure. So what, again, related to to this granular permission, every organization can have its own integration to a Slack channel. So it means that if every organization stands for a team, every team can get notification into a specific channel. And a nice method and workflow that we saw with some customer, they're using emojis. It's funny, but it works. Like they put an eye every time that a new vulnerability was found. So it means that you're auditing and checking it. And then they will use another emoji for saying fixed it or ignored it or whatever. So it means that they build the kind of communication and they can audit this Slack channel to see if they missed something. And this was a great, easy way to use in integration to make sure that people are taking actions and everything is covered.
Awesome. Thanks, Omri. So having concluded our presentation, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Both Omri and I will be on the chat to answer questions. So thank you, and I hope everybody's having a great time at SnykCon. Thanks, everybody.